Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the previous session. And to introduce myself, my name's Sam. I'm staff writer at the business publication Raconteur. And we're now going to move the conversation on to talking about how to navigate chaos effectively, particularly through the use of data and technology. So I'm sure many of the audience making climate feels more complicated than ever. Raconteur conducted some research recently, which found that business leaders, in half of cases, at least 11 people are now involved in company decisions, which is a lot more than it was previously. And there are a lot of reasons for this. The aftershock of the pandemic, transformative new technologies like AI, and geopolitical crises are all creating this complexity, which are impacting strategic planning of global businesses. This means that all too many companies are hit by inertia, worried that they won't make the right call, yet often not making a decision is worse than making the wrong one. So how can we overcome this? This is where data and technology can really help, and it's what we're going to be talking about today. Backing up decisions with insights and information means that businesses are less likely to take the wrong course. So to do this, business needs to be able to gain true value from their data, to guide their strategies and lead them to success. Understanding how to properly utilize the deluge of data which we're confronted with every day remains key. Which bits of information should be prioritized, which can be trusted, and how can technology help us? So in this panel, we'll try to answer all of these questions and more. To help me answer them, we've got our excellent panelists. So first up, we've got Angelos Kirianes, who is Management Advisor at Computer Center. Welcome, Angelos.
Welcome. I'm excited to be here today with you guys.
Great. We also have Jossie, who is Integrated Strategy Director at Ogilvy. Hi, Kurt.
Hello, everybody.
And we also have Laura Blackmore, who I'm sure you saw earlier today, who is Head of Strategy and Execution at Cascade. Hi, Laura.
Hi, good to be here.
Before we kick off the first question, I just want to remind everyone that I can see you're all in the chat already, but yeah, let's keep the conversation going in there. And if you've got any questions, feel free to share them. We'll be able to come to them at the end. And we'll be doing a couple of polls as well. So yeah, please join in and keep the conversation going. So yeah, to kick things off, kind of keep things broad, what role can data play in helping us to make better and more informed decisions? Kurt, I see you're off mute. I wonder if you want to kind of kick things off.
Yeah.
Why is data so important?
Yeah, I think from my perspective in the industry I'm in, so obviously we're in advertising, I think the advent of digital in terms of how our lives have changed has made data a very important part of advertising. Our previous form of data was focus groups. How does a product taste? How does it make you feel? And we've moved to quantitative data. And this data is pivotal, I think, specifically in the current climate we're in. I'm from South Africa, and as some of you might know, we've got quite a bit of turmoil economically, and navigating society and what our brands have to do in society is very important. I think there's a couple of ways to look at data, whether you're doing predictive analysis, whether we're doing diagnostic analysis. But I think what data is going to do, specifically in the current chaos that we find ourselves in, help us make better decisions. I think we'll never be 100% accurate with the choices and decisions we make, but we need to ensure we have the highest probability of success. And if you have the quality data, if you have the right type of data and know what type of prompts and what to ask of the data, you'll be informed to make better decisions, specifically in the chaos we find ourselves in.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's a great point. And yeah, as we're going to discuss, really, data really is the key. So yeah, Angelos, how are you kind of using data at Computer Center? Why is it important for you?
Well, data is for me, for the business, very important. So if I have, for example, network environment for a customer, and there is an incident somewhere, and the monitoring tool is showing you that everything is okay, but it isn't because we have an incident. Then we have to show into the data, we have to bring together all the people, the managers and the operations guys to see what happens, why the data are not all together in the monitoring tool. So it's essential to bring up again live the network so that the people can work and the business can go on.
And yeah, Laura, come to you next as well. What type of data sets are you looking at each day, and how are you kind of using data with Cascade?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. I think obviously we are a tech business, so data drives a lot of our decisions internally, but also when working with customers and strategy, of course, data is the number one thing we're talking about. Having good data inputs is going to feed those good outputs, but I've really seen an evolution, especially in the last maybe 1 to 3 years, where it's no longer just about one person's or 5 people's opinions on data. It's about how are the 11 or 15 decision makers in the room interpreting that data. And I think that's both a scary but also interesting environment to navigate in as we move through the different types of technologies and tools that we now use, such as ChatGPT. I was having a conversation recently, just a few days ago, actually, about how we can use these tools to really help us give good answers. But if the answer is wrong, then our whole decision-making process is actually going to go off in a different path. So I think, yeah, we're moving into this new era where everybody has access to so much data, but it's about the story and how we can leverage technology to make sure that we continue to still make good, strong decisions with that data. So yeah, looking forward to hearing how that's transformed in your businesses. What do you think, Sam? How are you using it? Obviously, you're a very data-driven business as well. How do you use that to inform your writing, for example?
That's an interesting question, actually. I guess it's slightly different on the journalism side of things. Often we're kind of looking through the data to try and find the stories and using it to really explain the business world and understand what is happening. Often you kind of see headlines focus on the latest news, but if you want to look at the trends and really understand what's happening, you have to have a grasp of the data and really see what the journey is like. And it often can tell you a lot more than interviewing and stuff now. Like data journalism is a really important part of for publications now. But yeah, I guess it's very different to how you're using data as well. I guess you talked about the complexity and the amount of data we're kind of confronted with. So I was going to ask you all, how do you go about deciding which data will be most useful and which kind of data sets to really focus on when you're trying to make your decisions? Perhaps Angelos, do you want to go first?
Thank you. So, we have a lot of years of experience here, and we are making enterprise architectures. And Laura was mentioning that different people has a different view on data, interpreting it differently. So that's why we are making in the beginning an assessment, and we are saying, okay, what kind of data do we need to run the business? What kind of data? How do we have to interpret the dashboards? Yeah, and to align with the whole organization in case of a chaos, in case of an incident, how to work together and to make a governance, to bring together the different people, and not only to have a look at the data. It's very important to have the data. I have seen many organizations that didn't have data in the beginning at all, or they didn't know what kind of data they have, and to bring this order into the chaos of data so that you can make dashboards. And that's the way we are going into these situations, to make it more clear to take decisions.
Yeah, so you're really using it to kind of guide your decision making. It's the data that comes first.
Yeah.
I always find the topic of kind of making decisions from data and the types of dashboards really interesting, because I think on one side, I've seen both sides of the table. One where you have a dashboard with every single piece of data you could ever imagine, but then you can have conflicting stories. Or, for example, there's a piece of data missing that would change the complete trajectory of the decision making. One of the pieces of advice that I often give businesses is to almost tier the type of data. So, for example, not thinking too complex about it, but having your core sets of data that will really inform those key decisions. For example, your top headline North Star metrics, and then you've almost got that second layer of, if something is drastically going off path, then you can use that to pivot and inform how you go about things. And then you've kind of got the everything else, which you may glance at every now and then to make sure you're on track, but really using those two both leading and lagging indicators to really drive the decisions that you make for greater impact. I'm not sure if that resonates with you, Kurt, or Angelos.
Yeah, I think it's important part in our business as well. And I think what we always, our North Star is always, what is the objective? What are you asking, or what do you need the data to do? That objective should guide you to the specific data sets and the specific prompts and questions in order to get the information you need. And in advertising, obviously, with the advent of digital, there's a plethora of consumer data out there, right? So if a brand wanted a target market to tie it to a new product, what we'd possibly look for is, let's look at data that gives us indication of consumer behavior. So again, all about the prompt and the question and the objective that then guides us to which data set should we be looking at and what kind of analysis is needed in order to get the outcome that we need.
Yeah, I want to add one thing. Sorry, Sam. I want to add one thing. There are different industries, and I have learned that different industries are looking different on the same data. And I think you have to take into account also if there is some standard pattern for an industry, how to interpret data and to align this, to make a sound decision, how to interpret the data and how to bring it then into decisions if you are in this situation where you have to come up again with your systems.
Yeah, I guess that speaks to the importance of data literacy and being able to understand what you're kind of seeing. So yeah, I guess, Laura, you kind of touched on it. When you have so much data, and sometimes the information that you're getting can be conflicting, how do you know which to kind of focus on and which to draw the right conclusions from?
I think it's a really hard question to answer, but I would say, and maybe my mindset is a little bit skewed coming from the last decade of operating in very fast startup, very quick, agile decision-making environments. Sometimes you just have to pick one and stay there for a little bit and test it and look for those indicators that suggest you have made the wrong decision. I think that's really important. I think the other piece is not being afraid to not necessarily bring in other stakeholders who may cloud the judgment, but finding the right person who may have the right context to add to that. I think that's probably one of the most important pieces, is not just kind of getting decisions by committees and getting lots of people involved, but choosing the right people. I'm not sure if that makes sense, or Kurt, I see you're nodding, so maybe that's something you agree with.
Yeah, I agree. I think we sometimes think that data can be very black and white, and I think there is room for interpretation. So it's always good to have the right people looking at to kind of give input and inform. And I think one of the key things, for us and in our space, is always trying to make sure that when we are looking at the data, we are aligned to the outcome that we need. I think we need to remove all bias. I think we expect that when we look at data, bias is removed, but we know that data is being mined and it comes from a source, and that source has been created. And we have to look at it in that lens. And I think test and learn, it's data. I think we live in an era where we can test and learn a lot of things really quickly. We can build MVPs really fast. We can get results. We can build out hypotheses before we take anything to market, before we take anything to our employees, before we do anything to our organization. That exists and allows us to play and find the right things to make the right decisions. What's your thoughts, Angelos, on the testing and learning approach within your world of data?
Well, one thing that it keeps me directly in the mind is that data and technologies are not silver bullets that we can heal everything. Yeah, we need really to have, as Laura said, the right people in the room to interpret it, to have people in the operations to see what really happened in with the cable. Yeah, what happens. Yeah, and to define from the beginning what we want to achieve with the data, and in regular time steps to re-evaluate and to adapt with the learnings we have over the time, so that we can get better and better. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really important to kind of stay adaptive and be ready to kind of look to fresh ideas as well. You kind of talked on the importance of context there, Kurt. Why is it so important to understand, where the data is coming from and what biases might come as a result of that, and how does that kind of affect the way you use it?
Yeah, I think again, specifically in our industry, for example, we deal with a lot of consumer data, and we know that consumers, who they are in the digital world and who they are in real life, might not be the same. So we need to always, take the consumer data with a pinch of salt. And when we are looking at consumer data, is to look at its source, understand the context in which the data was mined, where it came from, what was the context of a particular conversation or action that a consumer took. So when that data comes through, we put a couple of layers and lens on it. And once we've cleaned it up in that phase, we can actually say, okay, this data is clean, it's good for us to use, and it adds this value to our modeling that we're doing. But I think the context is key, because on its surface, you can easily fall into the trap of bias, as we were speaking about earlier. And I think for me, my favorite is unstructured data, the raw data. Hasn't really been touched or categorized yet, hasn't been put through a system or connected dots with other pieces of data. For me, that's the fun part about it. And then from there, taking that to a structural form and actually connecting the dots again with the right people in the room. Because we don't just collect data for data's sake, but data needs to inform something. So if you're not storing it, managing it, categorizing it properly, your outputs are always going to be skewed. Your outputs are always going to be, but far left.
I think the context is really important as well to kind of bring something a bit more to life on what I was thinking about when it comes to context. Is imagine you're looking at your data sets and you can see your consumer data or your product usage data is kind of in a downward trend. You could sometimes interpret that in isolation as being maybe market events, external events, but it could be simple as you've depreciate a feature or you've implemented a new feature that people are very frustrated with. And it always reminds me of when you download apps or you've got your favorite apps. Let's take Uber, for example, one that I use quite frequently, and they introduce a new feature and it just ruins your whole customer experience. Then maybe you're going to hop on over to Bolt or something else. And so I think making sure that you're not looking at the facts or looking at the data in isolation, or similar, like even using technology in isolation, particularly when again, if I use the example of rolling out Cascade, if we are only bringing in, for example, top level strategies and not bringing in any of the metric data or any of the business strategies, then really you can only execute that in very isolation. So choosing the right technology stack and to put around you, I think, is really important. We haven't talked too much on technology. I'd be interested to hear how technology plays a role in your worlds as well.
Yeah, Angelos, do you want to take that one away? What technologies are you using, and how do they really help you kind of grapple that data and make the most of it, I guess?
Yeah, different technologies to get the data is the one thing. The other thing is to have a culture of technology and to bring it into the company, that you need to have the data, you need to be connected so that you can take decisions. And then you're discussing the left side and the right side, what kind of technologies you want to use, machine learning or whatever. Yeah. the main thing from my point of view over 25 years of managing business data is to align in the industry, in the company where I am, that data are important, that data are helping us to achieve our business objectives. And then we are going to find very fast the right technology that is changing fast.
And I guess one of those big technologies which we seem to be talking about endlessly at the moment is AI. So do you see, what potential do you see in that to help us, really maximize the data that companies have and help us set those strategies that will lead us to success?
Yeah. AI is, from my point of view, a technology that will help us very much to get faster decisions, but we have not to forget that AI is only as good as the data he got, the biases, it got the failures it got. So you have really to have somebody to check this data, to have a look at it, to control the output if this decision make really sense. So you have to have a look at it at the end of the day, because on the one hand, you have a lot of opportunities, you will be faster, you can learn much more, but on the other hand, you have also risks that you have to take into account. And I'm a very huge fan of AI, but with a good and fair risk management behind it.
Yeah, definitely. I saw you kind of nodding along there, Kurt. I take it you agree AI is not taking over the job of data handlers yet.
Yeah, no, I think AI has ways to go. I think anything with human intervention is always going to have its good side and its bad side, right? But I think overall AI can play a massive role, but it has to be used correctly. We all know it's all about the prompt, right? The right prompt can unlock gems, and equally the wrong prompts can send you into some dire decision making. And like most tech and everything else we use, it's a tool to enable success. So a tool's only as powerful as the individual yielding it. So if you're not using AI correctly, then unfortunately you're not going to get better results. And I mean, as the saying goes, if the only tool you have is a hammer, then you tend to see every problem as a nail. So we need to understand AI better. We need to understand what it can and can't do, and we need to use it accordingly, and understand its power. It's not just another fancy search engine. It's got a lot of power behind it, and the machine learning that enables it. So I think the more we get to grips with AI, the more, again, we test and stretch its ability, we'll start to understand the role it plays and equally the role it doesn't play in decision making.
Yeah, definitely. And Laura, I know you've got a kind of background in AI as well. I wondered if you had any kind of interesting experiences with it so far.
Yeah, I completely agree with both Kurt and Angelos on how we should use AI. I think for me, huge fan. Obviously, I've got a bit of experience prior to Cascade, where I was working on initiatives like coming off the back of a factory, how to load a van appropriately with the products that were going out to impact the environmental CO2 emissions and that kind of thing. Why wouldn't you use it? Why would you have somebody self-calculating that? I think that is like a really easy thing that we can do. On the flip side, you've got things like ChatGPT, which is huge in the news at the moment. I think there are really powerful ways of using it, but similarly, if you don't know how to use it properly, I had this exact conversation with my mom a few days ago. She works in the academic world. They're all petrified of it. It's causing chaos when it comes to assignments from students because everybody's using it. So I think it has a place. Like Angelos mentioned, we have to have the right risk controls. Like Kurt mentioned, we have to enable people with the right prompts. So yeah, absolutely has a place in data technology and driving transformation and helping reduce the chaos. But yeah, we've got a bit of a way to go, I think, to empower people in the right way and enable people. So yeah, that would be, and I think for me personally, one of the most powerful ways I've used it when it comes to strategy, just as a real tangible outcome, is one of the most common questions I get is, does my objective look right? Is it worded correctly? And sometimes I'll throw it in ChatGPT, and sometimes ChatGPT will overinflate it and make it sound not so great. But if you can work with that and tweak it slightly, it's a really easy win, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's those kind of low risk use cases which are best, I guess, because as you were saying, it's in some industries it's creating as much chaos as it's solving at the moment. So yeah, there's definitely a way to go. We've been getting lots of questions in from the audience, so yeah, thank you all for engaging. One of the top ones here we've got from Melissa. How do you ensure that your data is clean? Because obviously, if you're using dirty data, you're going to get dirty output, as Melissa says. So yeah, I wonder if any of you had any strategies for that you can kind of share with the audience. Who wants to kick things off?
Yeah, I think from our side, I think we've invested heavily in CDPs and consumer data platforms, data management platforms. I think what we've focused on, I think, as an industry, and I think everybody probably on the calls will favor with it, is first-party data. Our diamond records are financial data, but first-party data, direct from the source. We hardly ever deal in second or third, and if we do, it's to validate or to add some layers and add some more nuance. But I think first-party data directly from the source, it allows us to control what's coming in. And then obviously through our data management platforms is making sure it's stored, making sure it's categorized, making sure the metadata is accurate, and constantly updated. Otherwise, as we know, once data gets a bit too old, specifically in I think the post-COVID time where 3 years can feel like 10 years, things can quickly change. So CDPs is what we use, and we have a full data team of analysis engineers who keep that data refreshed, as well as research teams that keep pulling in fresh data. So if we need to purge data, we purge probably every year, and we go through a lengthy process, but we can't do anything without clean data. Otherwise, it's just a waste.
Yeah, I cannot more agree on this, what you're saying, Kurt. It really reflects my experience with different customer situations, from mergers and the transformations of services and whatever, because you have to have a strategy how to cope with data, how to merge data, how to keep data alive. And I think clean was the terminus in the question. Yeah, over the time, not only in the timestamp today, but also over the time, and only if the data is over the time behind of a quality system, as you mentioned, then you can work with them good enough. Otherwise, you just have data and not informations.
Yeah, definitely. We've been getting people answer our polls as well. So yeah, we're looking at how long it takes people to collect data for reports, and also the amount of tools that people have in their tech stacks. So yeah, feel free to keep answering those. Next question as well from the audience. We've got Marcus, who asks, what are the factors that influence when decisions should rely on data rather than emotion? I guess we often think of these as kind of opposites, but perhaps they can, help inform our decisions and help us make better ones. Does anyone have any kind of input there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind if you. So I think for us, this is a constant fight in the advertising world. We deal with consumers. We know that human nature, most decisions are made on emotion and impulse before logic and rational thought starts to quantify or qualify the decision you've been made. And for us, it's a bit of both. I don't think we can leave the one behind. I think we look at qual and quant equally the same. And what it does, it makes our decision making more robust. So when we layer our qual data onto our quant, we end up making better decisions, but making better decisions at scale. And when we do factor in kind of the emotional level, we make sure that it's focused on who we need to address or who we're trying to target. Because we know emotions are not as general and as broad as kind of the rational data that we find. So we make sure when we do add in the emotional layer, it's very specific to what we need to do and who we need to speak to.
Yeah, I want to bring a different view to the emotions, because emotions are something wonderful. You have a customer and he's screaming why the service level agreements are not working. And then with the calm tone, you can show them with data that everything is all right. Yeah, and we are in the service levels as agreed. But the emotions are the information that the organization of the customer needs a different a different SLA maybe. Yeah, and then we have to talk about if the reporting or the contract, the internal contract or external or whatever, is the right one, or the business has changed and we need something different now. So that's why emotions are a good thing on the one hand. On the other hand, we have to show the reality with our data.
Excellent. I think we've got 1 minute left, so probably time for one last question. So we've got one here from Daniel, just asking what is the most challenging part of initiating a digital transformation strategy and starting that process of kind of digitalization, I guess. It's something which, you know, all of your companies have been through, you're very digital companies. So, but what challenges can that bring?
I can definitely bring a bit of a different perspective, probably not from playing the role of initiating digital transformation, but something that I often see with the businesses that I work with is which direction and what priority to give transformational projects. So I think one of the most difficult outcomes, I think, of starting the process is when you have almost a fire hose of ideas. And I've seen a lot of businesses are not afraid of ideas. It's actually the execution that they struggle with, is which ones do you prioritize first, and why, and how, and when, and how long should you focus on it before you figure out whether it's right. Because that's the one thing that I often see from digital transformation projects is sometimes it's a bit of a stab in the dark for a year or two before we recognize the impact. So I think that can often be the scariest part. One of the ways in which I've seen it facilitated really well is getting the right people in a room and facilitating a very healthy discussion without boundaries, and making sure you ideate and get all the ideas out there, and then figure out how you prioritize and figure out the impact that it's going to make on your core North Star metrics that we talked about at the beginning. Angelos, I don't know if you agree with that, if you've seen something work similarly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, and
yeah.
Sorry, Angelos, go for it.
Sorry, good. So absolutely. You know, my experience is that some companies are starting with digital transformation, but they didn't have defined yet the objectives that are helps the overall business strategy to be successful. So what strategy is behind to make a digital transformation? What do you need in this digital transformation to make your business successful? And this is something that has to be defined very, very, very smart, to say it by this way. And then to start to choose the technologies. And if you need in your warehouse an RFID to get all the items into the USRP, whatever you implement then, network devices, data centers, etc. But first comes the architecture and the link to the business strategy, and then the execution.
Yeah, couldn't agree with Angelos more. And I think to add on to that, you have to build in the culture as well. I think if you don't get people along the journey, you are making top-down decisions, and you're probably going to have a digital transformation journey expand over 4 times the length that it needs to, because you haven't gotten everybody on board. And also that digital transformation strategy becomes such a big part of your culture that it's how you then hire and expand your business. But it shouldn't just be a buzzword. If you are digitally transforming your business, you need to actually digitally transform your business. And everything that Angelos and Laura mentioned are the things you need to do, because, you know, doing it half measures is just going to be a waste of a lot of money.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, thanks again for your questions. I feel like I've really learned a lot, so I hope all of you have as well. And yeah, thanks to Angelos, Laura, and Kurt for being with us for our panel. So next up, we have Danielle Lattimore, who is moderating a panel on minimizing the cost of data, which is important for a lot of businesses at the moment. We know it's kind of challenging times for budgets. So yeah, I hope you all stay tuned in for that. And yeah, thanks again.
Thanks all. See you soon.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.